I'm making this video on atheism and religion because, first of all, I think it is a very important topic, and although there's a lot of debate on the topic, I think that mostly this debate just tends to radicalize both sides and doesn't really do anything to reach some type of consensus or to better either side. And in the second half of this video, I would like to give my opinion on a unique way for atheists to view religion, which I don't think anyone has ever given this particular viewpoint before, so hopefully that will be something new for atheists to consider. And this video is aimed at talking to atheists about religion, not talking to religious fundamentalists about science. So if you're a religious fundamentalist, you probably want to look at a different video. First, let me give a different perspective on this intense debate that you're engaging in with the religious fundamentalists. The reason the religious fundamentalists argue with you is the same reason that almost anyone argues angrily. It's because they're in denial. And that's not a particularly unusual condition for most humans. Let's look at evolution as a big example. There are three main reasons that I believe most religious fundamentalists are in denial about evolution. Number one, they can't take any challenge to their doctrine because then that brings the entire doctrine into question. Number two, it brings up some ethical considerations if there's really some type of a linkage between humans and animals. And number three, it is an ego assault for many of them to think that they're descended from lower primates. So you're not really going to convince these people with intellectual arguments. If someone's in denial, it takes a particular approach to help them through their denial. There's something that I think many atheists are in denial about in this debate, however. I think atheists tell themselves that, well, I'm engaging in this debate in order to further science. No, you're not furthering science. You're radicalizing people. When someone's in denial and you try to shove the truth in their face, you just radicalize them and make them more aggressive towards your ideas. So you're not really doing anything to help science or anyone else. You're spending your time basically engaged in intellectual snobbery. Another big debate seems to be over how much damage religion's done to the world. I think any large human institution will eventually become corrupt and do damage. It doesn't matter whether it's a religion, a government, a corporation. It almost always happens the same way. You could indict science the same way and say that science has created nuclear bombs and is destroying the environment. But it's really the misapplication of science by corrupt people that's done this damage. Now, I know a lot of atheists at this point are saying, well, I don't really debate the religious people. I just choose not to believe in a fairy tale. I choose not to believe in anything that I can't see or prove in some way. And that's really why I made this video. I wanted to address that issue. In order to begin to see your life from a different perspective, you don't have to believe in God or an afterlife or anything that you can't prove. All you have to do is believe that you're conscious, and I know you all believe that. And then consider that there are different states of consciousness, and you all know that. When you're asleep, you're in one state of consciousness. When you're awake, it's a different state. If you're under stress, you're in a different state of consciousness than when you're happy. There are many different states of consciousness, and everyone knows this. That's all you have to believe. For tens of thousands of years, some religious people have been engaged in the study of consciousness. And do you think in all that time maybe they've discovered something? Now you may say, well, if religion is so good at teaching people to improve their level of consciousness, why doesn't anyone do it? Well, the same reason that very few people truly try to expand their knowledge of science. I mean, scientific principles are relatively non-threatening, and yet look at how few people truly dedicate themselves to learning about science and then expanding scientific knowledge. Yet what could be more threatening than changing your consciousness, changing yourself? It's one of the most threatening things out there, and it's not surprising that very few people pursue it. Yet despite the intense difficulty, what could be more important than improving your level of consciousness? In science today, we're often taught that genetics are the main driver of everything, and I often disagree with this. For example, you can have two people who are identical twins. One of them may be completely insane and the other one may be sane. They're in totally different states of consciousness despite having exactly the same DNA. Sometimes a person goes through their life being very miserable most of their life, and then a shift occurs and they become very happy for the other half of their life, despite always having the same DNA, and often having the same surroundings. So these are just different states of consciousness. Some people are extremely narrow-minded, other people have a very expansive view of the world. Different states of consciousness. And these aren't necessarily genetically determined, although of course there is a genetic component, but it is possible to change. Let me give a simple example of how religion can teach people to improve their state of consciousness. Most religions around the world have very strict dietary guidance, and it's been proven that these religious diets are generally healthier than the diets followed by the average person. In the United States, for example, Seventh-day Adventists have a greater longevity than any other group, and they also have one of the strictest religious diets. Science, on the other hand, unfortunately, hasn't been as successful as religion on this particular topic of dietary nutrition. That's because religion has had thousands of years to empirically develop diets, whereas science is generally relying on limited data and trying to fit inadequate theories to this limited data. And there's also a great deal of the misapplication of science caused by corrupt scientists who sell out to industry. And so you get science promoting things like soy formula for infants or hydrogenated oil. And in general, it just hasn't been very successful on this one particular topic. Now, once you understand that religious guidance is useful in promoting overall health, it's easy to see that nervous system health is one component of your overall health. And a healthy diet will promote a healthy nervous system, which will improve your state of consciousness. Now you may say, oh, big deal, so religion can teach you to improve your health a little bit and your nervous system health a little bit. Well, this is just one small example, but even this example is a pretty big deal. I mean, a lot of people live in misery for decades or die decades early because they followed a poor diet. And I believe that a lot of people live with depression for decades because they follow a poor diet. You can review my video on that topic. But this issue of nutrition and religion is just one example. Over the millennia, religious traditions have discovered an incredible array of knowledge related to consciousness. Consciousness is basically a non-quantifiable entity, and things like this don't lend themselves to scientific analysis. The only way to understand them is through direct experience. It would be like scientists speculating what would happen to Columbus when he sailed over the horizon. They really have no way of knowing until Columbus experiences it. I know that for many atheists this may seem like an unusual way of looking at things, but hopefully I haven't said anything here that's particularly controversial. I haven't talked about anything supernatural or unbelievable. It's really just your decision whether you choose to embark on the very difficult journey of understanding heightened consciousness, or whether you prefer to investigate other things instead.